Is the crypto market safe? Are we all going to crypto heaven and gonna get green dildos just shoved down our throats and into our portfolios as well? Well, yesterday we were looking at the $95,000 region for Bitcoin very specifically as being that line in the sand that if Bitcoin closes above, that does massively strengthen the case. And I would go as far, just personally, I do think that the low is in with that closure yesterday. Now, just because the low is in does not mean that Bitcoin can't, retrace a bit from where it's at right now, maybe even come down towards the current low, close to it in some, small percentage matter, but very likely that is going to be the low. Again, if we are indeed bullish. Now, if we're not bullish, then you'll know because it'll go below the low, obviously, or below $92,000 at least. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Today, obviously, as well, is a CPI day. And I do want to actually go back on over here and just quickly talk about this stat that I saw from J35, actually in our Discord, was pointing me onto this one. And it's an interesting one. In the past 12 months, core CPI has had a 100% strike rate for meeting or beating expectations when core PPI came in lower than forecast, which yesterday it did. So if PPI came below, CPI probably does as well, or at least on. So we're not going to see any sort of like major, massive, surprise there. But, you're still likely to get some volatility around these events nonetheless. But, again, that bodes well for the more long term. Now, again, I want to be super fucking clear. I think that most people get this, honestly, but I still want to be super fucking clear about this. Just because the low is in does not mean Bitcoin can't retrace from where it is currently at. That can definitely happen. But the low of about $89,000 very likely does stand, if you are going to be bullish. So anyways, that's what I wanted to say about that. Now I want to get into a little bit of a short-term time frame analysis, and then we'll get into some fun stuff as to, how to know when Bitcoin's like ready to really fucking move. But first things first, let's go back down to the lower term timeframes and actually talk about that scenario, of which I do want to outline here that for this current bounce, if we take a nice Fibonacci retracement from low to high, we can see that Bitcoin is currently right at the 618 Fibonacci retracement, the golden pocket there. Let's call it 97,400 or so. This is a very, very common pullback area if you do approach it from the underside, which obviously it is right here. And again, pullback, not the same thing as reversal or anything like that. Like, relax. Just, you can see that like I have all of these YouTube comments in my head that I'm already responding to. Like I said, I think the average person like really understands it anyways here. So looking at this right here, 618, it is a common pullback region. So I would kind of be erring on the side of caution with that. In the short term, of course, that could come alongside the PPI, or sorry, not PPI, but CPI reads coming out a little bit later today. And then you see some volatility where you get some wicks to both sides, probably a wick to the downside. And, that probably should be it. Maybe. I mean, we'll see. But ultimately, when we go to the lower term timeframes, we can see from a momentum perspective that, things are getting pretty hot right now. They're getting hot and heavy, if you will. But the 6-hour time frame stochastic oscillator is reaching levels that we have not seen since the November rally, which, by the way, this particular area over here and times prior than that as well were local highs. And if we go down to the 4-hour time frame, we see the same thing as well. 4-hour stochastic oscillator is getting to the same areas as November 22nd, which was this sort of high area right here, alongside relatively high volatility represented by the BBWP indicator. So, I would not rule out a short-term pullback at all. Bitcoin can very easily pull back. I would even say to $94,000. Like, that's not out of the question or anything like that. But if Bitcoin were to do that, and this is my personal view, keeping in mind that I don't have an actual crystal fucking ball, but my personal view is that Bitcoin very likely does pull back from here. And you see like a quick wick either down to 94, maybe it goes down to like 93 or 92, but a quick wick down there and then back up. And if you see something like that, it's going to be that beautiful 3 spike low pattern that we've seen many times in Bitcoin's history that has marked off some pretty significant lows. So I'd be looking at that as, dare I say, the last major opportunity for, that next major higher low. Because as of right now, Bitcoin actually does not have a higher low even on the lower time frames, or as low as a 4-hour time frame. So theoretically, I'd be looking for a pullback here, but that pullback very likely to put in a higher low, and then you get the real move to the upside. And when I say real move to the upside, I mean just top side of the range. I don't necessarily think that Bitcoin's ready to break out just yet. We're still a little bit further away from the very end of this month. In fact, we're actually just, now that I look at my calendar, we're literally halfway there. So fair enough. Anyways, so yeah, we got that. Now let's get into some fun stuff right here. So we spoke about this briefly yesterday, so I'll actually get rid of this. I want to show something completely different and completely new. I want to show you what's happened in the last few elections that have been for Bitcoin's history. Or sorry, not elections, but inaugural days. So, keep in mind that this is a very, 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 very small sample size, but we're doing some fun analysis right here. So take it with a grain of salt, take it as you will, but looking at the most recent inauguration day, that was the 20th of January in 2021, and that was right here, pretty much very, very close to Bitcoin's low, maybe just one day late in this case, which actually did make quite a big difference. But again, in terms of timing, not bad in hindsight, obviously. And Bitcoin was essentially putting in the lows right here anyways. Going back to the one prior to that from 2017, again, very similar thing. Bitcoin was in a corrective phase. Yes, it wasn't exactly on the low, but you can see the general sort of trajectory from there, which was up and to the right. It would have been, in hindsight, a great fucking opportunity. And then, of course, if we go back to the only other time that we've seen this, even in Bitcoin's history, and that would be January of 2013. And that happened pretty much right on the actual pump where Bitcoin went from, $17 to $300. So that is... Look, I'm not saying we're going to see anything resembling this sort of move, but it is a very impressive move, over 1,500%. Anyways, with the inauguration gate coming in on this coming Monday, so we're still a little bit further away from it, I would be cognizant that Bitcoin can spike down a little bit, but that should be really an opportunity. On top of that, something that we spoke about in yesterday's video was the moons. The moons are at it again. The moons are at it again, to be honest. We do see that there was a bull moon or full moon quite literally on Monday's low. I mean, it happened on Monday, so that's when Bitcoin did put in the low, to be fair. And so far, so good on a big bounce. Now, what I would say, if we can bring up this right here, is that we can actually backtest these moons. Like I always say, don't fucking hate me for talking about the damn moons. I know it sounds crazy, but when you look at the stats are the stats. And right here, we can backtest what you would have earned if you literally just opened up a long on the new full moon and then closed it on the new moon. And if you did that for the past nearly 10 years, you'd have had these stats right here. Just over 58% strike rate with a 2.858 profit factor. Not bad. To put that into percentage terms, your average winning trade would have been about 14.36, and your average losing trade would have been just under 7%. And that does give us a time frame as well, because these happen in about 14-day spreads. So going into the actual chart and, projecting targets from there, we'll do the upside first. 14% to the upside puts Bitcoin where? Prior all-time high. And that would again be within 14 days from Monday. So basically the very end of this month, I would assume. Yeah. The 27th of January, which is kind of what we've been saying throughout this month, that expect more of a consolidation for most of this month, and then maybe the last week we see a move. So I'm still of that opinion. Now, of course, if it comes to the downside, because there is, about a 42% probability that it does, 7% to the downside will put Bitcoin on new lows. I do think that that's a lot less likely. I do think that that's just, quite unlikely right here. So I think that is, I never want to rule out a situation, obviously, but just when I think in terms of ranking which side is more likely, I do think that the upside is more likely here, to be fair. Again, I reserve the right to be massively fucking wrong about any of this shit at any moment, and there's zero recourse, and I take zero responsibility. But again, we have to work off some, or at least I have to work off some. So I choose probabilities because I know that more often than not, over the long term, it will be more right than not. Anyways, moving on from there, another sort of consideration that I do think really suggests that the low is in in terms of price for Bitcoin is the weekly time frame on the HPDR. You can see that the weekly has hit the bottom side of the 38.2 level yet again. Did the same thing last week as well, to be fair, and has had a heroic bounce from there. So, as long as Bitcoin, when I see something like holding into a zone like this, it tells me that it doesn't really want to break down. I mean, the chance was on Monday, and to be fair, Monday was a breakdown, but there wasn't, it was pretty short-lived, honestly. It's kind of quick and painless. Almost makes you think maybe that's also a sign. But yeah. Also going down to the daily as well, I think we see kind of the same thing. You can see that the daily 38.2 range to the downside showing around about $93,000. So like I said, Bitcoin can easily retrace down around there, but I'll just be looking for a quick wick, maybe it looks something like this, boom, and then boom. If you see something like that, that to me is a tremendously obvious signal. Again, it doesn't need to get all the way down to 93, but just anywhere between the median and that region. And the median, by the way, is about 96. So that does... That does offer up quite a wide range, but give it some time. Again, we're probably wasting time until around the last week of this month, or at least that's still my disposition right here. On top of that, the last thing that I'll leave you with, which is something that we spoke about or that I brought up, I don't know, it must have been like a week and a half ago, is this. I would not be. Now we're specifically talking about Bitcoin actually trending to the upside, moving outside of this range. Okay, we're not talking about range plays anymore. How can you have an objective signal to know that is even possible right now? Well, the 6-hour time frame moving averages have been the lowest time frame that give you the most close notice, I suppose, of any impending major move. And again, I'm going to give you a super fucking simple strategy right here. If you have half of a brain, you can figure out very simple ways to optimize this and make it significantly better. But even as it is, here's the strategy. When the 6-hour 21, which is this yellow moving average right here, crosses to the upside of the green 55, open a long. And when the 21 crosses below the 55, close that long. If you would have done that for the past, actually, I'm curious, how many years are we testing here? If you would have been done that for the past nearly 10 years, here would be your results. You'd have relatively low strike rate, 37.5%, but your profit factor, I would say, is quite nice, 3.668. To put that in percentage terms, average winning trade is just under 30%. Average losing trade is 5%. When you have a setup like that, yes, you can certainly survive with a 37.5% strike rate. Again, that does mean that anytime that we get that cross, there is actually a higher probability that it fails than not. But the picture that I want to paint here is that I'm not going to even entertain the possibility of Bitcoin having like the big move, let's say, past $100,000 until at minimum we get that moving average cross, which, to be fair, is on track to happen. I'm trying to visualize it here. I guess by end of week, maybe tomorrow, Thursday, but certainly by Friday, as long as, very specifically, as long as Bitcoin remains above 95,700, as long as that condition is met, that will remain in place right there. And, that opens up the possibility or the probability that, Bitcoin can actually have a massive move to the upside. Because what would 30% look like? Oh, we can also come up with a date for this as well. I'm curious if this matches up with anything else. Let's see. Average amount of bars in winning trades is 162. Okay, I can't do the mental math on that. So, okay, so I'm going to assume here that it does happen by Friday. Again, that means that we would assume Bitcoin must remain above about 95,700-ish region for that to occur by about Friday. 30% to the upside. If it plays out the upside, okay. The roof is too short here. That puts Bitcoin at $130,000. And what did we say? 60 something bars, or no, 160 bars. Holy shit. That's a move that goes deep into like deep into February, actually, which also lines up with some of our other projections, like the bi-monthly minimum median target on the HPDR. But I won't get into that today. I don't want to get like super in the weeds with shit right now. But yeah, again, as long as Bitcoin's above 95,700 by Friday, you will see that cross happen. Thus, that move is possible. And if it does happen, again, you can still get a wick to the downside. That's fine. Just don't want to see significant closures below especially like 92, 93-ish region. And that, at least in my opinion, probably be, the last major opportunity for a long-term position at, the next major higher low. So, for me, that would be perfect if it does indeed happen. That's essentially what I'm looking for. Not that it has to happen. Anyways, Intel then, like I said, I think today is going to be a bit of a tricky day. I personally, I know the CPI and PPI are highly correlated over the past year, but I really would not rule out. Jesus, man, my fucking language soundings are wrecked. I would not rule out a move like this first, where you get quick wick to the downside, boom, back up, nice and painless, and by Friday, hopefully you'd get that moving average cross. If you see all of that, that would look really fucking good to me, and would make me very, very confident that indeed the low is in. But just one last thing here. I know I'm dragging on a little bit longer than usual, but one of the other reasons why I think that if you're bullish, I think you have to believe that the low is actually already in. Or at least it makes sense to believe that the low is already in. When we go back to the monthly look right here, you can see that the monthly did put in a nice wick to the downside on that $89,000 move. That will theoretically officially test that red 5 exponential moving average, which you do see a reconnect in pretty much all of these trending moves throughout the full history of Bitcoin. If Bitcoin closes this month closer to $100,000, it's going to drag it up there. So, it is an average after all, and it goes off of the most recent closure. So, that again would be very much indicative to me that the low is in. I guess I should probably go over as well, like, what would make me really concerned, I guess. If you see anywhere below the 9th of January low, which is 91,200, or a closure below like $92,000. Sorry, let's make that just 91, just nice round and even. At that point, okay, I'm wrong. There's no lows to be spoken about here, at least, and significant downside very likely to follow. But with Monday's price action, I do think that it's very reasonable actually to say that the low is probably in there. So we'll see. I suspect that we'll get some further confirmation upon today's event. And again, like I said, if we see that scenario happen with a quick wick to the downside and then a nice pop back up relatively soon after that, that would essentially be my signal of like, okay, yeah, it's game on. Anyways, that's where I'm going to leave things for today. A little bit of a longer video. I do apologize about that, but I'm having a good time. Anyways, we'll be back on with a live stream analysis on Friday. So yeah, hopefully I see you there. Anyways, as always, take care and much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.